Ethan Ward never imagined his ex-wife's final gift would feel like a punch to the gut. The rain came down in sheets as he stood alone in a deserted parking lot, staring at the only thing she left him after the divorce: a rust-stained sedan that looked one pothole away from collapsing. After losing his home, his savings, and even his reputation in court, this scrap of metal felt like her last twist of the knife. But then he saw it, the trunk. The lock was clawed and bent, sealed with layers of brittle tape, as if someone had tried desperately to keep something hidden inside. His breath fogged in the cold air as he reached for it, a strange pull tightening in his chest. When the trunk finally creaked open, Ethan froze. What lay inside wasn't junk. It was a secret one, powerful enough to unravel everything he thought he knew about his marriage and about the people who destroyed his life. Before everything collapsed, Ethan Ward's life had been painfully ordinary in the kind of way he once believed was safe. Crescent Bay was a small coastal city where mornings smelled of salt and old pine, where fishermen greeted sunrise before most people opened their eyes. Ethan had always admired the quiet of it. As a sound engineer working for a mid-sized production company, he spent his days shaping audio for commercials and documentary shorts. Modest work, steady, predictable. And predictability, he believed, was the glue that held a good marriage together. Back then, he and Lila lived in a modest two-bedroom house on Alder Street, with a tiny garden that Ethan insisted on planting every spring. He used to kneel in the dirt, hands muddy, while Lila leaned against the porch railing, scrolling through her phone, calling him sweet for trying so hard. She wasn't cruel in those days, just impatient, ambitious, always looking past the present toward something shinier. Ethan had naively thought they complemented each other, his calm to her fire. But even then, the cracks were forming in ways he refused to acknowledge. Their early evenings usually unfolded the same. Ethan cooking something simple, while Lila breezed through the door with the scent of expensive perfume trailing behind her. She worked in marketing at a growing tech company, always surrounded by people louder and slicker than Ethan. She thrived there, and with every new project she brought home, she seemed to bring less and less of herself back to him. He remembered one night in particular. She tossed her purse on the counter and kicked off her heels. "Long day?" Ethan asked, plating dinner. "You could say that." She sighed, not looking at him. "Some people in my team carry everything, while others just get by." She didn't have to glance at Ethan for him to know the jab was intentional. It was subtle, but it landed like a slap all the same. He tried to brush it off. "Things will pick up. I've been working on a proposal for the studio project." "Ethan," she cut in, "you've been working on it for 2 years. Don't you want something more for us?" More. That was always her word. More money, more status, more excitement. And Ethan, who valued comfort over spectacle, we became a quiet disappointment she never directly acknowledged, only hinted at through comparisons. There was always someone else's husband who'd bought a bigger house, someone else's fiancé who had a more prestigious job, someone else's boyfriend who took risks. Those comments carved into Ethan slowly, like tiny knives slipped between the ribs. Still, he tried. He stayed late at work, pushed for bigger assignments, took freelance gigs. He came home exhausted, but proud, imagining Lila would see the effort. She rarely did. Her smiles grew rarer. Her phone stayed glued to her hand, and her schedule, once predictable, began shifting. The first signs were small: a sudden meeting, a late-night team dinner, a just coffee with a colleague, but they accumulated, forming a quiet storm Ethan was too hopeful to read correctly. One night, after waiting 3 hours for her to come home for dinner, he heated the food for the 3rd time. When she finally arrived, her lipstick was smudged and her blouse slightly untucked. Ethan's stomach sank, but he forced a smile. "How was dinner?" he asked. "What dinner?" she responded, not even realizing she had promised to come home early. His voice faltered. "Hours." Her eyes flickered with something he couldn't name: guilt, irritation, or maybe exhaustion. but she walked past him as if the conversation were optional. It wasn't a single moment that broke them. It was the accumulation of these small, sharp pieces, cutting deeper with each passing day. But the real shift began when Lila mentioned a new name, Marcus Cross. It started innocently enough. Marcus liked my pitch today. Marcus thinks the campaign can go nationwide. Marcus handled the investor meeting brilliantly. Ethan nodded at each mention, convincing himself it was harmless admiration. He wanted to trust her. He needed to trust her, but trust began to feel like a fragile thing between his palms, something he tightened his grip on so hard that it threatened to crumble. The rumors didn't help. A co-worker of Lila's, someone Ethan only knew in passing, pulled him aside during a community event. "Hey man, just keep an eye on Marcus Cross. He's known for getting a little too friendly with women who aren't free." Ethan laughed it off. "No, Lila's just working closely with him?" "Sure," the co-worker muttered, unconvinced. "If you say so." Those words rooted themselves inside Ethan, wedging into a place he didn't want them to be. But again, he swallowed them down. He didn't want to be paranoid, didn't want to become the jealous husband who saw ghosts in every shadow. Still, the shadows began to take shape. There was the evening Lila came home, wearing a necklace he had never seen before. When he asked where it came from, she hesitated before saying it was a company gift. There were the weekend conferences she suddenly needed to attend, though she'd previously avoided work trips. The phone calls she answered in the other room. The messages she claimed were just work, and through it all, Ethan tried to reason with himself. She's stressed, she's ambitious, she's trying to build a future for both of us. He kept repeating it until it sounded like truth. But truth wasn't what held their marriage together. It was denial, thin and brittle. One evening, they sat at opposite ends of their dining table. Ethan ate quietly, cutting into his dinner in small, cautious motions. Lila scrolled through her phone, and fork untouched. The space between them felt wider than the table itself, wider than the room, wider, perhaps, than their entire history. He watched her, the glow of the screen reflecting over the tears he didn't want her to notice. She had never looked further from him, yet she was just inches away. That night, Ethan lay awake long after Leela had fallen asleep, staring at the ceiling, trying to pinpoint the moment their marriage had shifted from a shared life to two parallel lines. He couldn't find it. Maybe there wasn't a moment. Maybe the distance had always been there, hidden beneath their attempts to be the couple they imagined themselves to be. All he knew was this: whatever was unraveling between them had already pulled too far to be stitched back together with good intentions. And as he glanced out the window toward the small garage, where the old sedan they'd once taken road trips in sat gathering dust, he had no idea that one day that same car would return to him like a cruel reminder and a doorway into a truth he never asked for. That night, Ethan closed his eyes and tried to imagine a future where things would get better. But even in the dark, something inside him whispered that some storms don't pass, they reshape everything they touch. In the months that followed, the quiet fractures in Ethan and Lila's marriage deepened into visible fault lines, raw, undeniable, and impossible to ignore. What had once been a partnership now felt like a performance, one that Lila seemed increasingly uninterested in rehearsing for. Ethan tried to keep their life stitched together, but every thread he pulled only revealed more unraveling beneath the surface. Lila's world was expanding at a rate Ethan couldn't keep up with. Her team at the company landed a major contract, and with it came late-night strategy sessions, weekend retreats, and a sudden shift in wardrobe, sharper cuts, expensive fabrics, colors she never wore before. She moved with a new confidence, a glow that came from being admired, sought after, praised. But that glow rarely illuminated Ethan anymore. When she walked into a room, her smile widened for everyone but him. Around that time, Marcus Cross began appearing in Ethan's life in ways he never wanted, not physically at first, just as a presence. a name that floated into every conversation Leela started. Marcus and I are heading the new campaign. Marcus thinks we should push internationally. Marcus says, I have real leadership potential. Her tone changed when she mentioned him, not warm or affectionate, but charged, like she was speaking about someone whose opinion mattered more than she wanted to admit. The first time Ethan heard the name, it was nothing. The 10th time, it was a pattern. The 50th time, it was a warning. But the warning didn't come from Lila herself. It came from other people, people who didn't owe Ethan anything. One of Lila's co-workers, a woman named Jen, pulled him aside at a small company gathering. I'm just going to say this once, she whispered. Glancing around, Marcus Cross is trouble. He doesn't respect boundaries. If he's taken an interest in Lila, you should be aware. Ethan felt the words slam into him like cold water. But he forced a polite smile. Thanks, but Lila's committed to her work. She's not the type to, I'm not saying she would. I'm saying Marcus tries, always. Ethan nodded, thanked her, and walked away before she could see the doubt swelling inside him. He told himself it meant nothing, that Lila was loyal, that he shouldn't be insecure. But insecurity has a way of tightening around the heart like a fist, and over time, that fist squeezed harder. The breaking point came during a company event. Lila insisted Ethan attend. She said it would help him network, though Ethan suspected she just wanted him off her back about spending so many nights out. The event was held at a rooftop bar overlooking the city. It was sleek, expensive, full of people who spoke in rehearsed laughs and clinked glasses like they were celebrating themselves. Ethan felt out of place the moment he stepped inside. He scanned the crowd for Lila, but found her before she saw him. She stood near the railing, overlooking the city lights, laughing at something Marcus said. Her face was open, animated, alive in a way Ethan hadn't seen in months. Marcus leaned in too close. His hand brushed her waist. She didn't pull away. The world narrowed to a single, suffocating point. When Lila finally noticed Ethan, her smile faltered. Marcus casually stepped back, unfazed. Lila approached Ethan with a mixture of surprise and irritation. You're early, she said softly. You said 8. Ethan replied, working to keep his voice steady. I meant fashionably late, she muttered, forcing a laugh. But he didn't laugh. He couldn't. What's going on with you and Marcus? The question slipped out before he could control it. Her face hardened instantly. Not here. Then where? Ethan pressed. She straightened, eyes sharp. You're being ridiculous. He's my boss. He touched you. He touched everyone. He's European. That's not an excuse. Her voice dropped to a low, dangerous whisper. If you're going to act jealous and insecure every time someone appreciates me, then maybe you're the problem. The words hit him like a physical blow, and before he could respond, she walked away back to Marcus, back to the lights, back to the world where Ethan had become nothing more than a shadow trailing behind her. They didn't speak again until they got home, and when they did, the argument erupted like a storm they'd been holding back for years. You embarrassed me, Lila spat, pacing the living room. I embarrassed you, Ethan asked, disbelief cracking his voice. You're the one acting like like I'm what? She snapped. Successful, admired, moving forward, acting like you're single. She stopped. For a moment, the silence between them was thick and sharp. Then she laughed a humorless, cold sound. You're projecting, she said. You've always been threatened by anyone who challenges your fragile ego. Ethan stared at her. I've supported you through everything, and I've outgrown you, she replied. There it was, the truth, naked and cruel. After that, they lived like strangers occupying the same house. Breakfasts went cold between them. Conversations turned into negotiations. Touch became memory. Ethan kept waiting for Lila to soften, to return to the woman he'd fallen in love with, but she drifted further away each day, disappearing behind meetings, excuses, and half-truths. One night, she came home at nearly midnight. Her makeup was smudged, and she reeked faintly of wine. Ethan sat in the dim living room, waiting. "You weren't answering your phone," he said quietly. "I was busy." "With who?" she sighed. "Don't start. I need to know what's going on." "No," she said, brushing past him toward the stairs. "You just want control." He followed her, voice trembling. "Leela, I love you. I'm trying. That's the problem," she said, spinning around. "You're trying to hold on to something that isn't working anymore. Because you don't want it to work. Because you're suffocating me." The shout echoed through the house. Ethan flinched. Lila froze, realizing how loud she'd been. Then she said the words that ended something inside him. "I don't know if I want to be married to you anymore." She left him standing in the hallway, stunned, then locked the bedroom door behind her. That night, Ethan slept on the couch, listening to the faint rhythm of the waves crashing beyond their street, wondering how two people who once shared everything could become so irreversibly lost. The next morning, she acted as if nothing had happened, packed her bag, kissed him lightly on the cheek, a kiss that felt more like a farewell, and left for work. He tried to convince himself she was just overwhelmed, but the truth was lodged in his chest like glass. Lila wasn't overwhelmed. She was gone. Not physically, not yet, but emotionally, spiritually, irrevocably. And the man pulling her further and further away had a name Ethan could no longer ignore: Marcus Cross. What Ethan didn't know then, couldn't have known, was that Marcus's influence ran deeper than flirtation, deeper than admiration, deeper than desire. What Marcus wanted, Marcus took, and Ethan was about to lose far more than a marriage. He was about to lose the life he thought he'd built on solid ground, and the first tremor of that collapse had already begun. By the time autumn arrived in Crescent Bay, the tension between Ethan and Lila had calcified into something hard and biting, something that sat between them at meals, followed them down hallways, and seeped into every corner of their once warm home. The air felt colder. Even when the heater hummed through the night, conversations became clipped exchanges, every sound, doors closing, footsteps on the stairs. The vibration of Lila's phone made Ethan's nerves tighten, like strings pulled too far. Lila wasn't hiding her disdain anymore. She moved through the house like it was a waiting room she couldn't wait to leave. Ethan watched her with a kind of helpless grief, wondering if anything he said or did would ever reach her again. But deep down, he knew the answer. The final unraveling came in ways he never saw coming, ways orchestrated not just by Lila's drifting affection, but by someone far more dangerous. It began with a problem at work. It was a Tuesday morning, unremarkable at first. Ethan arrived early, hoping the quiet hours would help him focus. He had been working on a large project for months, a full audio reconstruction for a high-budget nature documentary. It was the kind of job that could put him on the map, maybe even support the studio idea he'd been nursing for years. But when he opened the project files, his stomach clenched. Entire sections were corrupted, sound layers distorted beyond recognition, key sequences missing. He tried to stay calm, troubleshooting everything he could think of. He asked the IT team to check the server, but they looked at him with awkward hesitation. Later that afternoon, his manager called him into the office. The expression on her face told him everything before she spoke. "Ethan, we received a report this morning," she began slowly, "that you were seen accessing secure server files without authorization." "What?" Ethan blinked. "I never." "And that you may have uploaded external data onto our system over the weekend." "No," he said firmly. "I wasn't even here this weekend. Something's wrong with the files." "We know they're wrong," she interrupted. "The entire project is compromised. The client is furious. This could cost the company a major contract." He sat frozen, unable to process the words. "You're suspending me," he finally whispered. "Until further notice. We have to investigate this fully." It felt like the room tightened around him, like a fist closing. "But I didn't do anything," he pleaded. "I swear." She wouldn't meet his eyes. "I'm sorry, Ethan." He walked out of the office in a daze, his mind racing. Unauthorized access, corrupted files, someone sabotaged the project, but who and why? He didn't have to wonder long. When he got home, Leela was sitting on the couch, scrolling through her tablet. She looked up with a raised brow. "You're home early." "Suspended," he said flatly. She didn't react. Not the way a spouse should, not even with shock. She just lifted her eyebrows slightly, as if confirming a suspicion. "Suspended. For what? Someone sabotaged my project? They think I did it." Leela closed her tablet with a soft click. "Oh, Ethan." "What?" he demanded. "Maybe they're right," she said quietly. His heart stopped. "How could you say that? You've been distracted, Moody. Jealous. You haven't been sleeping. I've seen you pacing at night, rewriting emails 100 times. Maybe you were stressed. Maybe you made a mistake." "I didn't," Ethan snapped. "Why would you even think?" "Because," she said, eyes sharpening, "you're not the man you used to be." Those words shook him to his core. "You're starting to sound paranoid," she added, "like you're looking for someone to blame." He stared at her, realizing with dawning horror that she wasn't defending him. She wasn't even surprised. It was as if she had been waiting for him to break. He tried to explain, tried to insist he was being framed, but Lila cut every sentence short with an icy dismissal. She said things like, "You're imagining it, and no one's out to get you, and sometimes things fall apart because they're meant to." By the time she left the room, Ethan felt gaslit into silence. The next day, he learned that the story had spread around the office fast. People whispered, some avoided eye contact, others looked at him with thinly veiled suspicion. The weight of it pressed against his chest like a stone. But the real blow came 3 days later, when he received a letter from the company's legal department. They were pursuing termination based on evidence of misconduct, and he sat on the couch, staring at the paper for nearly an hour, before Lila walked in. "What's that?" "I'm being fired," he said hollowly. She didn't comfort him. She didn't even sit down. "I'm sorry," she said instead, her tone flat. "But you can't expect me to pretend this isn't affecting me too." "Affecting you?" Ethan asked, stunned. "My whole career is collapsing." "And mine is just beginning," she snapped. "Do you know how embarrassing this is for me? Do you know what my colleagues will think?" He felt heat rising under his skin. His voice cracked. "I need you on my side." Leela crossed her arms. "I don't think I can be." It was in that moment Ethan understood. She had already chosen a side, and it wasn't his. Over the next week, Lila became more distant, more irritable, more absent. She spent long evenings at the office, and sometimes didn't come home until after midnight. Ethan tried to confront her once, but she shut him down immediately. "Don't start," she snapped. "I'm not doing this with you again." It was during this time that Ethan heard a rumor from one of his old co-workers, a rumor that left him shaking. Marcus Cross had been seen meeting with executives from Ethan's company's parent firm. Whispers hinted at a partnership. And where Marcus went, influence followed. Pieces clicked together in Ethan's mind, ugly, terrifying pieces. Could Marcus have orchestrated the sabotage? Had he wanted Ethan out of the picture, not just romantically, but professionally? The suspicion lodged itself deep inside him. Things reached their breaking point when Lila announced one evening, without warning, that she had filed for divorce. Ethan felt the air leave his lungs. "You already filed. I have to move forward," she said briskly. "This isn't working anymore. We can try counseling." "No." Her tone was sharp, final. "Ethan, look at yourself. You're unstable. You're not the person I married." He felt himself crumble. "Please, Lila, don't do this. Don't walk away like this." Her eyes were cold. "I already have." The divorce proceedings moved faster than Ethan could comprehend. Lila hired a ruthless attorney. They accused Ethan of professional instability, emotional volatility, and financial incompetence. Everything he'd built, his home, his savings, His security was stripped away piece by piece. He fought back, of course, but the evidence against him was manufactured so expertly, so cleanly, that the court ruled in Lila's favor. When the judge announced the final division of assets, Ethan sat numb. Lila was awarded the house, most of their joint savings, even the furniture. He was left with a small settlement and one item Lila didn't bother to contest: an old, beat-up sedan sitting in the driveway. "You can keep the car," she had said with a dismissive wave. "It's not worth anything anyway." Ethan walked out of the courthouse feeling like a ghost. He stepped into the parking lot where the sedan sat, a shell of a car they had once taken road trips in, now abandoned like the rest of their life together. He gripped the keys tightly, as if holding on to them would keep him from falling apart. But what he didn't know, not yet, was that this car, this broken relic, held something far more valuable than either of them realized. Something hidden, something dangerous, something Lila had never meant for anyone to find. And when Ethan eventually opened the trunk, his ruined life would begin to shift in ways he couldn't yet imagine. Ethan's life after the divorce felt like living inside an echo, every sound hollow, every step uncertain, every day a reminder of what he'd lost. He moved out of the Alder Street house on a gray, wind-bitten morning, carrying only a handful of boxes and a heartbreak so heavy it seemed to creak inside his chest. His new apartment was nothing like the home he once shared with Lila. The walls were thin enough to hear the neighbors argue at midnight. The windows whistled when the coastal wind picked up. The carpet smelled faintly of mildew, no matter how many times he cleaned it. But it was the only place he could afford after the court had stripped him of almost everything. He tried to make it livable, hung a few old posters, arranged a small workstation beside the window, but the apartment always felt temporary, like a stopover between disasters. He would sit on the floor some nights, staring at the boxes he still hadn't unpacked, wondering how a life built over years could be reduced to cardboard and duct tape so quickly. One afternoon, a thick envelope arrived in the mail. For a moment, he thought it might be a mistake, something meant for another tenant, but his name was printed clearly on the front. Inside were the final documents from the divorce settlement. He forced himself to read every line. The numbers felt like knives: what he owed, what he'd lost, what Lila had taken. But one line in particular made his jaw tighten. Vehicle: 2008 gray Claremont sedan, awarded to Ethan Ward. Awarded, as if it were a prize, as if it were something she had graciously bestowed on him. It was laughable. Lila hadn't just left him the car. She had thrown it at him, like a bone tossed to a dog. The sedan had been in their possession for years, an old fading memory of road trips and early dates and cheap summer vacations. But time hadn't been kind to it. The paint had faded to a dull, lifeless gray. The engine rattled on cold mornings. The interior carried the stale smell of spilled coffee and forgotten fast food bags. Still, as battered as it was, it had once meant something to them. Now it was all he had left. He stared at the words in the settlement, feeling a sting sharper than he expected. The message was clear: "This is your worth." Later that week, he went to retrieve the sedan from the shared driveway of the house he could no longer enter. Lila wasn't there, but her presence lingered in the well-kept lawn, the bright new flowers arranged near the porch, the polished windows. Everything looked pristine, as if she had been waiting for an excuse to cleanse the last traces of him. The sedan sat alone in the corner, like a forgotten relic, a mockery. Ethan approached it slowly, the weight of humiliation pressing down with each step. He ran his fingers along the chipped paint, the scratches on the door, the dents on the bumper. The car felt as bruised as he did. He unlocked the door and slid into the driver's seat. The air inside was stale, thick with the scent of abandonment. Dust coated the dashboard. A few old receipts were crumpled in the cup holder. The seatbelt clicked in with a rough, reluctant snap. He gripped the steering wheel and closed his eyes. He remembered the last road trip they took together before everything fell apart. They had driven up the coast, stopping at small beach towns along the way, laughing about which one they'd retire in someday. Lila had leaned her feet on the dashboard, saying she liked the idea of a small, quiet life. But small and quiet had never really been enough for her. He started the engine. It coughed, rattled, then groaned into motion. Ethan inhaled deeply, trying to convince himself this was the beginning of a new chapter. But as he reversed out of the driveway, something thumped in the trunk. He froze. Probably just junk, he told himself. Old tools, a box of clothes, leftovers from a move. But the sound lingered in his mind. A hollow, heavy thump. He dismissed it. He had enough burdens without inventing new ones. The drive back to his apartment was long and quiet. The sedan vibrated at high speeds. The radio made an intermittent buzzing sound, and the engine sputtered any time he pressed the gas too hard. Traffic moved sluggishly, and Ethan's thoughts slowed with it. As he drove, he considered how Lila hadn't even tried to keep the car, hadn't asked for it, hadn't mentioned it. For someone who fought so viciously for the house, the savings, the furniture, why would she simply hand over a vehicle, any vehicle, without a second thought? He brushed the thought away. He was too tired to care. For the next few days, the sedan sat parked in the lot behind his apartment building. Ethan avoided driving unless he had to. The car felt like a reminder of a life he'd failed to protect, a marriage he couldn't save, a future he couldn't reclaim. Then one evening, after a long shift at a part-time warehouse job he'd taken to stay afloat, he trudged toward the parking lot with aching muscles and a head full of worries. He noticed something odd immediately. The sedan's rear bumper was damp. Not from rain, it hadn't rained in days. He crouched beside the trunk and touched the seam, sticky, like old adhesive. He squinted and leaned in closer, tracing his fingers along the edges. Faded strips of tape clung to the metal tape that had been peeled off recently, but not cleanly. The lock bore scratch marks, as if someone had tried to pry it open with something sharp. An uneasy prickling crawled up his spine. Why would anyone tape a trunk shut? He straightened, glancing around the parking lot. It was empty, except for a few scattered cars and a flickering street lamp. The silence felt heavy, almost watchful. He tried opening the trunk. It didn't budge. He pulled harder. Nothing. The key worked on the driver's door, the ignition. Everything else but the trunk refused to open. A sudden, irrational thought shot through his mind. What if Lila taped it shut? But why? And when? He examined the lock again. The scratches were fresh, jagged, like someone had either tried to open it or tried very hard to keep it closed. A strange anxiety fluttered in his chest. He stepped back, hands on his hips, staring at the car as if it might reveal the answer on its own. The setting sun cast long shadows across the cracked asphalt. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of the ocean. He swallowed hard. Whatever was in that trunk wasn't meant to be seen, not by him, maybe not by anyone. He tried reasoning with himself. It could be nothing. A broken latch, a stuck hinge, leftover junk from when they moved. But that didn't explain the tape or the scratches or the weighty thump he'd heard days earlier. A knot formed in his stomach. He couldn't shake the feeling that the car, the very thing Lila dismissed so casually, held something she didn't want him to find, or something she no longer had the courage to face. For the rest of the night, he barely slept. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw that trunk sealed, scratched, stubbornly shut. He imagined bags of old clothes, forgotten belongings, or something else entirely. By morning, he made a decision. If the car held answers, he needed them. He wasn't just curious, he was drowning. And the truth, whatever it was, might be the only thing that could pull him out of the darkness swallowing his life. Whole, he grabbed the keys, threw on a jacket, and headed downstairs. He didn't know it yet, but he was walking toward a discovery that would tear apart everything he thought he knew and everything Lila had tried so desperately to bury. Because inside that trunk was the first crack in a story far bigger, far darker, and far more dangerous than losing a marriage. It was the beginning of a truth powerful enough to unravel lives, including his, the morning Ethan decided to finally open the trunk. Crescent Bay was wrapped in a thin mist that drifted across the streets like ghostly breath. Everything looked softer in that light, quiet, blurred but inside Ethan's chest. A tight, unyielding tension had taken root. He gripped the sedan's keys in his hand as he walked down to the parking lot, each step echoing a mix of dread and determination. The trunk wasn't just a locked compartment, it had become something else, an unanswered question, a whisper he couldn't silence, a weight pressing on his mind every waking moment. He just needed to know, needed to see, needed to understand why Lila would leave him a car sealed like a secret. When he reached the lot, he found the old sedan parked exactly where he'd left it. Its dull paint blending into the gray morning, he could almost pretend everything about the car was ordinary until he saw the trunk again. In the dim light, the scuffed edges, faded adhesive residue, and the slight bend near the lock seemed even more pronounced. He touched the trunk gently, as if it might flinch. "All right," he muttered under his breath. "Let's see what you're hiding." He tried the key. The lock refused to turn. He tried again, harder. Still nothing. Frustration began to simmer beneath his skin. He knocked on the metal, listening. The echo came back muted, dense, as if something heavy pressed against the inside. The thump he'd heard days ago resurfaced in his memory. He exhaled sharply and stepped back. "I need help with this." He didn't know many people in Crescent Bay anymore. After the divorce, he'd pulled away from everyone, friends, co-workers, acquaintances. He didn't want pity, didn't want questions, didn't want the look people gave when they realized he was the one who'd been left behind. But there was one person he could still turn to, not a friend, an acquaintance, someone practical, someone who had known him from the sidelines for years. Sam Rosario. Sam ran a small auto garage 2 blocks from Ethan's apartment, a place Ethan used to bring the sedan for oil changes and minor repairs back. When things were simpler, Sam was in his early 60s, with hands worn from decades of work and eyes that missed nothing. He was gruff, blunt, but honest, and he always seemed to have a quiet understanding about people's hidden troubles. Ethan drove the sedan slowly through the mostly empty streets, the engine rattling under the hood. Every bump, every jolt made him more aware of the mystery in the trunk. When he arrived at the garage, Sam was already outside, wiping grease from his hands with a rag. "Well, look who the tide dragged in," Sam called out. His voice was rough but not unkind. "Heard things got complicated." Ethan forced a small smile. "That's one word for it." Sam nodded, as if expecting the understatement. "So what brings you here? Car giving you trouble?" "I think something's wrong with the trunk," Ethan said cautiously. Sam raised an eyebrow. "Wrong how?" "It won't open," Ethan said. "Feels jammed, and the lock looks like someone tried to pry it open or tape it shut." "I'm not really sure." Sam frowned. "Tape? Show me." Ethan led him to the back of the car. Sam bent down, examining the seam around the trunk and the dented lock. His frown deepened. "Well, that's not normal," Sam muttered. "Looks like someone didn't want this thing opening, but also looks like someone else tried to break in." A cold ripple ran through Ethan's spine. "Break in." Sam gestured toward the scratches. "These aren't old. Whoever did this was either in a hurry or scared." Ethan swallowed hard. "Can you open it?" "Depends," Sam said, standing up. "Do you want me to?" Ethan hesitated. That question hit harder than he expected. Did he want whatever truth was inside that trunk to come out? Did he want his life already fragile and broken to be pushed into whatever came next? He thought of Lila's coldness in the final weeks, the way she avoided the car, the dismissive way she'd given it to him. The tape, the scratches. He exhaled. "Yeah, I need to know." Sam nodded once, slow, and deliberate. "All right, pull it into the bay. I'll take a look." Inside the garage, the fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead as Sam gathered tools, mostly small pry bars, lubrication, and a thin metal strip designed for lock manipulation. Ethan stood nearby, arms crossed, trying not to imagine all the worst possibilities. "What do you think is in there?" Sam asked, while fitting the metal strip into the dented lock. "I don't know," Ethan replied truthfully. "I thought it'd be empty, or just junk from the move." Sam grunted. "Nothing about this looks like junk." He worked carefully, methodically, until the lock clicked slightly, just enough to loosen its grip. "All right," Sam said, stepping back. "It's still stuck, but it's weak. You'll have to force it." "Me?" Ethan blinked. Sam shrugged. "It's your car, and I get the feeling whatever's inside is meant for you." Those words made Ethan's stomach twist. He approached the trunk slowly, hands trembling. He slid his fingers beneath the edge, where Sam had loosened the metal. The trunk still resisted, as if something inside pressed back. He inhaled deeply, then pulled. The trunk snapped open with a crack so sudden, it echoed through the garage. Ethan stumbled slightly, steadying himself before leaning forward to see. Inside the trunk was not the dust, clutter, or forgotten belongings he expected. Instead, lying neatly in the dark cavity, were three distinct items: a black leather suitcase, a thick, sealed envelope, and a small metal box no bigger than a lunch container secured with a padlock. For a moment, Ethan couldn't move. His breath hitched in his throat. The world seemed to narrow until it was just him and the contents of the trunk. "What the hell?" Sam whispered behind him. Ethan reached for the envelope first. It was heavy, almost stiff with its contents. Someone had written his name across the front. Ethan. Just his name. No return address, no explanation, and the handwriting, his chest tightened, was unmistakable. It was Lila's. His hands shook as he lifted the envelope from the trunk, the thickness of it suggesting documents, maybe even money. But it was the intention behind it, the secrecy, the urgency that rattled him most. Sam let out a low whistle. "Is that from your ex?" "Looks like it," Ethan murmured. "You gonna open it?" Ethan stared at the envelope, a sense of dread coiling in his stomach. In a minute, his eyes drifted to the black suitcase next. It was sleek, newer than the car itself. He unlatched it slowly. It opened with a soft click. Inside were bundles of cash, stack after stack, neatly arranged, and tightly banded more money than Ethan had seen in years. More money than he'd ever owned. "What in God's name?" Sam muttered. Ethan's throat went dry. This wasn't forgotten luggage. This wasn't something Lila accidentally left behind. This was placed here. Hidden. Meant to stay hidden. His gaze snapped to the final item, the metal box. It was plain, industrial-looking, with a sturdy lock. It felt heavier than it should when he lifted it, as if its contents were dense, important, dangerous. A dread settled slowly over him. Whatever was inside that box wasn't just valuable. It mattered. A lot. Sam backed up slightly, sensing the shift in the air. "You should be careful with this stuff. This don't look like normal people's business." Ethan couldn't disagree. His head buzzed with too many questions. Why would Lila leave this? Why the secrecy? Why the tape, the scratches, the locked box? What had she gotten involved in? And why hide it with him? He looked down at the envelope again, at his name written in her handwriting. His pulse throbbed in his neck. He felt the truth pressing closer, the kind of truth that changes everything. He opened the envelope. Inside were several pages, some handwritten, some printed, but the letter on top caught his eye first. Its edges were crumpled, stained as if it had been handled while someone's hands were shaking. He unfolded it. "Ethan, if you're reading this, then something went wrong, and I don't know how much time I have left to make things right." His breath stilled. He read on, each word tightening like a noose around his reality. Everything he thought he knew about Lila, about Marcus, about his own downfall. None of it was what it seemed. And the truth, Lila had finally written down, the truth hidden inside his trunk, was about to pull him into a dinding storm far darker and far bigger than anything he'd ever imagined. And this time, there would be no easy way out. Ethan read the first sentence of Lila's letter again, slower this time, as if the words might rearrange themselves into something less terrifying, but they didn't. They remained heavy, trembling across the page, carrying the voice of a woman he once knew, a voice he barely recognized now. If you're reading this, then something went wrong. His fingers tightened on the paper, the edges digging into his skin. Sam stood a few steps behind him, arms folded, trying not to intrude but clearly uneasy. "You, good," the older mechanic asked quietly. Ethan didn't answer. He couldn't. His focus tunneled onto the next line, like a man stepping deeper into a cave without a flashlight. "I didn't want to drag you into this. You were the only good thing in my life, Ethan, even when I was too foolish to see it. But I don't have anyone else left. Not now. Not after what I've done. And what I've found out." He swallowed, his mouth dry as dust. Leela never wrote like this. Not when they were together. Not even in moments of regret. There was a rawness here. Fear, desperation, maybe even shame. He kept reading. "You were right about Marcus. I should have listened to you months ago. It started small flirtation, attention, little promises whispered between meetings. I thought I was in control. I thought I knew what he wanted. But I was wrong. So wrong." Ethan's stomach twisted. He felt Sam watching him carefully, but he couldn't look up. "Marcus wasn't interested in me. Not really. I was useful to him because of my position at the company, because I had access to files he needed, because I could get into places without raising alarms." A tremor ran down Ethan's spine. At first, it was harmless documents he said he needed to review. Numbers he wanted clarified. He made it seem like normal business. And I believed him. I wanted so badly to believe someone saw my potential. Her handwriting grew shakier, slanting slightly downward, as if the weight of the truth had begun dragging her hand. By the time I realized what he was doing, I was already too deep. I tried to back out, but he threatened to expose everything, claim I forced the documents out, that I stole company property. He told me no one would believe me, not with how close we'd been. Ethan let out a slow, uneven breath, his vision blurred at the edges. Sam took a cautious step forward. "Son, you want me to—" "No," Ethan said hoarsely. "I need to know." He turned back to the letter, so I kept helping him. "I hate myself for it, and I hate that I dragged you down without even realizing it. I didn't know Marcus was planning to sabotage your project. I only found out afterward, when he bragged about making sure the husband problem wouldn't be a problem anymore." Ethan's knees nearly buckled. Sam reached forward instinctively. "Easy," he murmured. But Ethan shook him off gently. Holding the pages like a lifeline, I tried to stop him. I confronted him. I told him you were innocent, that you didn't deserve what he did. He laughed at me. "Ethan," he said, "you were collateral damage." He said people like you were easy to break because you trusted too easily. Ethan clenched his jaw, breath shallow. I was supposed to keep helping him, feeding him information. But I couldn't anymore. I started copying the files instead. Everything I could get my hands on. Documents, emails, financial statements, transactions that tied him to things I can barely understand, offshore accounts, laundered funds, names I don't recognize but know I shouldn't. All of it is in that metal box. Ethan's eyes drifted to the small locked container resting in the trunk. It looked innocent enough, but now he understood why it felt heavier than it should. "I know he'll come after me when he finds out. He's already suspicious. He watches me, follows me. I hear footsteps outside my apartment some nights. I don't know how long I can keep pretending." Her handwriting became jagged, letters uneven. "I don't know if this will save me, but maybe it can save you. There's money in the suitcase more than I ever wanted to be part of. It's from one of Marcus's projects. I took it before I ran, I thought. Maybe you could use it to get away if things got bad. Ethan's throat tightened. He didn't even realize he was shaking until Sam set a steadying hand on his shoulder. The next lines were smudged, as if written through tears. I'm sorry, Ethan, for everything. For choosing ambition over us. For letting Marcus twist my weakness into a weapon. For not protecting you when I had the chance. You didn't deserve any of it. A few drops of something, water or tears, or both, had marked the bottom of the page. I don't know if I'll make it out of this. If I can't, then please, don't trust anyone connected to him. Don't go to the police unless you're absolutely sure who you're speaking to. Don't show this letter to anyone who might be watching you. The last paragraph trembled with urgency. If you manage to open the metal box, you'll understand why I had to hide it. Why I had to hide it with you. They won't stop looking for it. They won't stop until they're sure it's destroyed. And if they find out you have it, I don't know what they'll do. A final line, only 6 words cut through Ethan like a blade. I never stopped loving you. I'm sorry. The letter ended there. No signature, no date, no instructions. Just an apology carved from guilt and fear. Ethan stared at the paper, numb. The garage felt too quiet, too still. A cold sweat slid down his spine. What was he supposed to do with this? How was he supposed to process the fact that Lila, his Leela, who had torn him apart, had also been trying, in her twisted, desperate way, to save him? He felt everything at once. Anger, grief, confusion, a hollow ache for the woman he once loved. A deeper ache for the stranger she had become. Sam cleared his throat gently. Son, this ain't just relationship trouble. This is criminal. Serious criminal. If this Marcus guy is who she says he is, I know, Ethan whispered. You need to be careful. Ethan nodded vaguely, eyes still on the letter. Yeah, and that box, Sam added, glancing at the metal container, might be something people would kill for. The weight of those words settled like lead. What are you gonna do? Sam asked. Ethan didn't have an answer. He folded the letter carefully, so carefully it felt like handling fragile glass, and slid it back into the envelope. His hands still trembled. He then lifted the metal box from the trunk. Its surface felt cold. Almost too cold, like it held something alive and dangerous inside. The lock was sturdy, unyielding. He didn't try to open it. Not yet. He placed the suitcase and envelope in the back seat of the sedan, then closed the trunk with a muted thud that reverberated through his bones. Sam walked with him toward the driver's door. Whatever happens next, you're not alone. If you need anything, tools, a place to stash the car. Thank you, Ethan said softly, the words heavy with sincerity. Sam nodded once. Be safe, kid. Ethan got into the car and shut the door. The interior smelled faintly of dust and old memories. He rested his hands on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead as the garage door lifted. He wasn't the same man he'd been when he drove in. He wasn't sure who he was now, but he knew one thing with startling clarity. His life hadn't fallen apart because of bad luck or a failed marriage. It had been dismantled, deliberately, methodically, by someone who played with power the way other people played with toys. Marcus Cross, and whatever truth lay inside that metal box was the key to everything. His fall, Lila's fear, the sabotage, the lies, but truth had teeth, and once he opened that box, there would be no going back. He drove out of the garage, the envelope resting silently beside him, and for the first time since the divorce, he felt something sharp and alive flicker beneath his grief. Not hope, not yet, but resolve. Whatever Lila had left him in that trunk, he wasn't going to run from it. He owed her that much. He owed himself more, and somewhere in the shadows of Crescent Bay, a man named Marcus Cross had no idea his world was about to shift. The drive back to his apartment felt longer than any road Ethan had ever taken. The sedan rattled down the quiet streets, its engine grumbling like an old man complaining about being woken too early, but Ethan barely heard it. His mind was too loud, filled with images of Lila's trembling handwriting, the suitcase full of cash, the cold metal box sitting on the seat behind him like a silent threat. He kept seeing her last line over and over. I never stopped loving you. I'm sorry. It twisted something inside him, something he thought had died long ago when she walked out and left him standing amid the rubble of their life. But now, everything was different. Now, there were secrets, crimes, fear. Now he knew Leela hadn't simply moved on. She had been running. He pulled into the parking lot behind his apartment building and killed the engine. The quiet that followed felt unnerving. Too empty, too still. Ethan sat there for a long moment, staring through the windshield at nothing. His hands were still on the steering wheel, knuckles white. Was he in danger? Was Lila still alive somewhere? Who else knew about the box? He eventually exhaled and reached for the suitcase and envelope. The metal box he carried last, its weight pressed into his palm with uncomfortable insistence, like it wanted to be opened, but also warned him not to. He hurried up the stairs, scanning the parking lot more times than he cared to admit. He wasn't normally paranoid, but paranoia didn't feel like a flaw anymore. It felt necessary. Inside his apartment, he locked the door, then locked it again, then slid the chain into place. The air inside was stale from being shut up all day. A single lamp glowed in the corner, casting long shadows across the cramped living room. He set everything on the coffee table carefully. First the suitcase, then the envelope, then the metal box. For a few minutes, he just stared at them, listening to his pulse thrum in his ears. He didn't open anything yet. He needed help. Someone to talk to. Someone who wouldn't panic. Someone who had known him long before his life went up in flames. There was only one person he could think of, Nolan Pierce. Nolan had been his closest friend for nearly a decade. They'd met in their early 20s, bonded over bad beer and worse apartments, and had stuck through countless milestones, new jobs, career setbacks, Ethan's marriage, Nolan's brief engagement to a woman who'd vanished before they made it to the altar. Nolan was blunt, cynical, and often irritating, but he was loyal, solid, the kind of man who would show up at 2 a.m. if Ethan needed a ride or a couch to crash on. They hadn't spoken as much lately, not since the divorce, but Nolan had reached out a few times, asked how he was doing, offered to hang out. Ethan had withdrawn from everyone, but Nolan never pushed too hard, just stayed present on the edges, steady as ever. If there was anyone he could trust with something like this, it was Nolan. With trembling fingers, Ethan grabbed his phone and dialed. The call connected after 3 rings. "Ward," Nolan answered, voice groggy but alert. "You, alive?" "Barely," Ethan said. "Can you come over? I need you." No hesitation. Nolan perked up. "When?" "Now." Nolan didn't ask why. "Give me 15. Ethan hung up and paced the living room until he heard footsteps approaching. Outside. He checked the peephole. Nolan's familiar messy blonde hair and crooked grin stared back. Ethan unlocked the door. "Jesus," Nolan said the moment he stepped inside. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Something like that." Nolan tossed his jacket on a chair and cracked his knuckles. "All right, tell me everything, and don't lie. You only look like this when the world ends." Ethan gestured to the table. It started with the trunk. Nolan's eyebrows shot up. "The car, Lila's old heap." "Yeah." Nolan stepped closer, eyes widening as he took in the sight of the suitcase and metal box. "What the hell?" Ethan told him everything. Not quickly, not smoothly, but thoroughly, starting from the stuck trunk, the tape, the scratches, Sam helping him open it, the suitcase full of money, the envelope, and finally Lila's letter. Nolan listened without interrupting, arms crossed, jaw tightening with each new detail. By the time Ethan finished, Nolan looked pale beneath his usual sarcasm. "Dude," he whispered, This is bad." "I know. No, I mean really bad. Like, people disappear for less." Ethan nodded silently. Nolan ran a hand through his hair, pacing the small room. I knew she was trouble the minute she started talking about that Marcus guy, but this. He pointed to the metal box. This is the kind of thing ruthless men kill over. Ethan swallowed. What do I do? Nolan stopped pacing. He stared at Ethan for a long moment with an intensity that made Ethan's skin prickle. You need to open that box, Nolan said. It's the only way to know what you're dealing with. Ethan glanced at the padlock. It's sealed. Nolan smirked. Lucky for you, I have questionable hobbies. He disappeared into the kitchen and returned with a small toolkit he kept in his car for reasons Ethan had never fully understood. Nolan knelt by the table, selecting a slim metal pick. You sure you want to do this? He asked. Ethan hesitated. Leela had warned him. Don't trust anyone connected to Marcus. Don't go to the police unless you're absolutely sure. But Nolan wasn't connected to Marcus. He was a nobody in Marcus's world. A regular guy. A loyal friend. So, Ethan nodded. Nolan worked the lock with surprising skill. In less than a minute, there was a soft click. The lock fell open. Ethan's breath caught. This was it. The moment truth stopped being hidden and started being a threat. Open it, Nolan murmured. Ethan lifted the lid. Inside, neatly arranged, were stacks of documents, 4 USB drives, and a small external hard drive. Nolan let out a long, low whistle. Holy shit! Ethan sifted through the papers. Bank transfers, offshore accounts, shell corporations, signatures, some belonging to Marcus, others to names Ethan didn't recognize. Emails discussing deliveries, assets, and liabilities. Financial reports with numbers that didn't add up unless you knew how to read between the lines. It was like staring at the skeleton of a monstrous machine. But one document made his skin crawl. A report detailing the internal sabotage of Ethan's company's project. His project. The words E. Ward had been circled in red ink. Beneath it was scribbled, "Frame complete. Proceed." His vision blurred with rage and horror. They ruined me, he whispered. Marcus. He destroyed my career. And Leela, she knew. She tried to warn me. Nolan grabbed the report and read it, eyes darkening. This is insane. You could take this to the FBI. I don't know who to trust, Ethan said. I don't even know if they're watching me right now. Nolan nodded. Yeah, we should keep all this quiet. Very quiet. Don't make any sudden moves. Ethan rubbed his temples. I need time to think. Nolan closed the metal box, fastened the latch, and handed it to Ethan. Keep this hidden. Don't show anyone. Don't tell anyone else. Not until you know who's on your side. Ethan nodded. Thank you for helping me. Nolan gave him a tight smile. Always. Man, you'd do the same. He left, not long after, but something lingered behind something Ethan couldn't name. An unease, a shift, a shadow. After Nolan's footsteps faded, Ethan stood alone in the quiet apartment, staring at the items on the table. For the first time since the divorce, he didn't feel helpless. He felt terrified, yes, but he also felt a spark of something else. Purpose, anger, resolve, because now he knew the truth. Now he understood why everything had fallen apart. And now he had the evidence. He didn't know it yet, but he wasn't the only one who knew the trunk was open. Someone, somewhere, had been waiting for this moment, watching, and the storm headed toward Ethan was only just beginning. Ethan barely slept that night. Every time he closed his eyes, the images from the metal box flickered behind his eyelids. Numbers, names, money routes twisting like vines. Marcus's signature stamped across crimes Ethan didn't even have the vocabulary to name. And beneath it all, Lila's handwriting, her warnings, her fear. He woke long before sunrise, lying on the couch with the envelope clutched loosely in one hand. His neck hurt, his back ached, but none of that compared to the heaviness inside his chest, a weight that felt like it was pressing him deeper and deeper into a world he did not understand. By mid-morning, he forced himself up, Coffee tasted like metal. The quiet of the apartment felt oppressive. He needed to make sense of everything inside the box, and he couldn't do it alone. Nolan had helped him crack the lock, yes, but Nolan wasn't a strategist. He wasn't someone who could parse financial crimes or power structures. Ethan needed information, context, something to anchor him to what he was dealing with. So he turned to the one source he trusted most: data. He set his laptop on the table and began digging. Marcus Cross, he typed the name, hit enter, and watched pages of search results populate the screen. On the surface, Marcus's record was clean, too clean. Graduated from a mid-tier college, rose to corporate leadership disturbingly fast, connected to several quietly powerful businesses, real estate development, tech investments, and something ambiguous labeled asset management consulting. Ethan clicked deeper. Every public photo showed Marcus smiling in expensive suits, standing next to people just as polished: politicians, CEOs, lawyers with immaculate teeth. Yet no one seemed to know where Marcus had made his initial wealth. His early years were a void. Ethan frowned. People like Marcus didn't rise without leaving footprints, unless they were sweeping them away on purpose. His search led him to a forum thread, an anonymous discussion board used by finance insiders. Someone had posted a question months ago about Marcus Cross's rumored shadow accounts. The replies were vague, cautionary, but one stuck out. Cross isn't a businessman. He's a broker of leverage. The favors he collects are worth more than the money he moves. A chill ran down Ethan's arms. He scrolled further, another anonymous comment: if you're digging for dirt on Cross, stop. People disappear for less. His pulse quickened. Had Leela read things like this? Did she know what she was up against? He swallowed and pushed deeper. Soon, he discovered that some of the company names in the metal box, the ones he didn't recognize, weren't companies at all. They were shells, entities created to move money discreetly through various accounts: Technova Holdings, Redwell Maritime, Arcadia Digital Imports. Names that sounded legitimate but had no websites, no staff, no history. Ethan typed each one into a secondary search engine designed for business records. One by one, the results appeared. Redwell Maritime was registered to a mailbox in Florida. Technova Holdings was listed as inactive, though it had moved millions through offshore accounts. Arcadia Digital Imports had a registered agent named Marcus C. He stared at the letters silently. His heartbeat felt loud. Suddenly, everything Lila wrote seemed terrifyingly real. A knock at the door jolted him upright. His breath hitched. No one visited him unannounced. He tiptoed to the peephole. It was Nolan. Relief washed through him, though the tension didn't fully leave his body. Ethan opened the door. "Hey." Nolan stepped inside with his usual unhurried gait, though his eyes flicked around the apartment, checking corners as if expecting someone to be there. "You didn't answer my message," Nolan said. "Just wanted to make sure you weren't dead." "Sorry," Ethan murmured. "I was researching." Nolan eyed the laptop, and Ethan gestured toward the table. "You're gonna want to sit down." They spent the next hour sifting through the documents, matching names, cross-referencing dates, digging through articles and leaked reports. Nolan was surprisingly invested, leaning in close, asking sharp questions. "So you're telling me," Nolan said, tapping a finger on a bank statement, "that this Cross guy used half a dozen shell companies to funnel money into digital ad firms that don't even exist?" "Looks like it," Ethan replied. "And Lila's company." Ethan pointed at a file. He used her access to pull internal financial data, probably to manipulate valuations or manipulate sales numbers. "Maybe both," Nolan whistled. "And your sabotage? Your suspension? It's connected," Ethan said bitterly. "He needed me gone. I was too close to something. Or maybe I was just an obstacle." They worked until the afternoon faded into early evening. What emerged didn't form a full picture, but it formed enough of one to make Ethan's skin crawl. Marcus Cross wasn't just a corrupt executive. He was running a network, a constellation of offshore accounts, laundering operations, falsified contracts, and political kickbacks. He was dangerous, untouchable, and ruthless enough to orchestrate the destruction of one man's life. Without blinking, Nolan leaned back, rubbing his face. Jesus, Ethan, if half this stuff is real, you don't just have leverage. You have a bomb. Ethan shook his head. I have a target on my back. Nolan exhaled slowly. Then, we need to be smart. Something in Nolan's tone made Ethan pause. Not suspicious, just focused, calculating. Nolan stood and walked to the window, peeking through the blinds. You noticed that SUV out there yesterday? Ethan stiffened. What SUV? There was a black one parked across the street. Tinted windows, no plates on the front. Not exactly subtle. Ethan's stomach twisted. You think it's connected? Wouldn't surprise me, Nolan said. If Marcus suspects Lila ran, and that you might have something she stole. Ethan felt a wave of nausea. You think they're watching me? Nolan turned. I think you need to assume they are. A heavy silence settled over the room. Ethan suddenly remembered the odd car near his apartment 2 nights prior, the phone call with no voice on the other end, the sensation of being observed on his walk home the day before. He hadn't connected the dots. Not until now. Fear crawled cold and unwelcome beneath his skin. Nolan sat back down and leaned in, lowering his voice. Listen, you can't go to the police. Not yet. Why not? Ethan whispered. Because you don't know who's in Marcus's pocket. Guys like him always have cops, lawyers, judges. You walk in with this stuff in your hands, and you might not walk back out. Ethan ran a shaky hand through his hair. Then what do I do? Nolan hesitated, as if weighing his next words carefully. We hide the box. We stay quiet. We gather more information. Maybe find someone in law enforcement who isn't corrupted, whistleblowers, journalists. But we have to move carefully. Ethan nodded slowly, though the plan felt fragile, like walking across glass. As they talked, the room grew darker. Streetlights flickered on one by one outside. Nolan eventually stood to leave. Lock your doors, Nolan said. Barricade them if you have to, and don't open the trunk again unless you're sure you're alone, Ethan nodded. Thanks, Nolan. Seriously. Nolan placed a hand on his shoulder. I've got your back, man. Always. After he left, Ethan locked the door and leaned against it, exhaling shakily. The apartment felt quieter than before. Too quiet. His thoughts wandered back to Lila, her letter, her fear, her final apology. He realized something with a cold, slow clarity. He wasn't just uncovering corruption. He was inheriting a war she'd tried to escape. And by opening the trunk, he had stepped directly into its line of fire. Outside, a car engine rumbled faintly. Ethan froze. He peeked through the blinds. A black SUV rolled slowly down the street before disappearing around the corner. His breath caught in his throat. Someone already knew. Someone was watching. And the more Ethan uncovered, the closer danger crept. The storm had not just begun, it was already here. The next morning, Ethan left his apartment only because he had no choice. His food was running low. His nerves were stretched thin. And the claustrophobic silence of the 4 walls felt like it would crush him if he stayed any longer. He stepped outside cautiously, checking both ends of the street. No SUV, no lingering shadows, no sign that anyone was watching. But the absence of danger didn't calm him. It made him more uneasy. Predators didn't always stalk in plain sight. He drove to a small grocery store a few blocks away, his eyes constantly flicking to the rearview mirror. Every car seemed suspicious, every driver too interested, every reflection in a window, a potential threat. He hated himself for it, hated how jumpy he'd become. But after reading Lila's letter, after discovering what Marcus was involved in, paranoia felt less like a symptom and more like protection. Inside the store, he grabbed only what he needed: bread, eggs, coffee. He stood in line, tapping his foot, trying to appear normal, even though his pulse hammered in his throat. Next, the cashier called. He stepped forward, then froze, standing 2 aisles away, casually flipping through a magazine, was a man he didn't recognize. Or rather, he didn't recognize the face. But everything about the man felt wrong. Too still. Too observant. His gaze flicked up for a split second, meeting Ethan's eyes before returning to the magazine. It was nothing. It was something. Ethan couldn't decide. He forced himself to pay, grabbed his bags, and walked quickly toward the exit without looking back. As he stepped into the parking lot, he felt a presence behind him. Footsteps. He turned. Ethan. A woman stood a few feet away, her brows raised in cautious recognition. She was tall, dressed in a fitted blazer and slacks, carrying a leather satchel. Her posture was sharp, her gaze unsettlingly direct. "Do I know you?" Ethan asked, instinctively stepping back. "You don't," she said, with a polite, professional smile. "But I know of you, Detective Harper King." She reached into her blazer, slowly, deliberately, and pulled out a small badge wallet. Ethan scanned it. The name checked out. The credentials looked real, too real to be easily faked. Still, fear didn't leave him. If Lila warned him not to trust anyone, why would a detective suddenly show up looking for him? "What do you want?" Ethan asked quietly. "Just a conversation," Harper said. Her voice was calm, but carried an undertone of something else: authority, maybe, or pressure, regarding your ex-wife. Ethan's heart thudded painfully. "Lila." "Yes." He gripped the grocery bags tighter. "Why? What happened?" Harper tilted her head. "You haven't heard." "Heard what?" She hesitated, not dramatically, but thoughtfully, like someone choosing the order of her words carefully. "Lila was involved in an incident last night," Harper said. "Her car was found near Ridgewater Bridge. It went off the road." Ethan felt the breath leave his lungs in a single violent rush. "No," he whispered. "No, that can't. She didn't survive." Harper finished softly. The world dimmed around him. The parking lot, the cars, the dull noises, all of it blurred. His knees weakened, and for a moment he thought he might collapse. He reached for the door of his car to steady himself. I'm sorry," Harper said, her voice gentler. "I know this is a shock." Shock wasn't the word. Devastation, horror, a grief he didn't have time to process. And something else, fear sharper than any blade. If Marcus had suspected Lila of betrayal, if she was running, if she had sent Ethan the evidence, then her accident was no accident at all. But he couldn't say that. He couldn't trust her. Not yet. Harper watched him carefully, studying every twitch in his expression. "I'd like to ask a few questions." Ethan forced himself to breathe. "About what?" "About Lila's last known movements," Harper replied. "And about you." Ethan's blood ran cold. "Why? Why me?" "Because," Harper said, "her phone records show she called you yesterday afternoon." Ethan blinked. "She didn't. I swear she didn't." Harper didn't flinch. "She did. A call lasting 57 seconds. He stared at her in disbelief. He hadn't answered any unknown numbers. He hadn't received any missed calls, unless the call never connected, or unless someone else used her phone. "I didn't speak to her," Ethan insisted. "I didn't know she was even." He stopped himself. He almost said in trouble. Harper narrowed her eyes slightly, as though catching the half-formed thought in midair. "You didn't know she was what?" "Mr. Ward?" "Nothing," he said. Harper took a step closer. "Look, Ethan, I'm not here to accuse you of anything. I'm trying to understand what Lila was mixed up in before she died." Ethan's heart lurched. She knew. Not everything, but something. "What do you mean mixed up in?" he asked carefully. Harper studied him. "We'll talk about that when you're ready. Here's my card." She handed him a white business card with clean lettering and an embossed seal. "Call me," she said. "Soon. And Ethan, be careful. If you know anything you're afraid to say, Tell me before someone else finds out. The words hit him like a warning wrapped in silk. Then she turned and walked away, her heels clicking sharply across the pavement until she disappeared behind a row of cars. Ethan stumbled into the driver's seat and shut the door. He sat there, shaking, trying to breathe through the choking dark that had settled over him. Lila was dead, and a detective was circling him, and Marcus must have known she ran. He drove home on autopilot, every instinct screaming at him to disappear, to run, to burn every piece of evidence and vanish into the night. But he didn't, because running wouldn't save him. This wasn't a problem he could outrun or outwait. Inside his apartment, he locked the door and threw the groceries on the counter. He reached for his phone with trembling hands and called Nolan. He answered on the second ring. "Hey, man, everything okay?" "No," Ethan rasped. "Lila is dead." A long silence. Then Nolan whispered, "Shit." "She drove off a bridge," Ethan said. "Harper King, a detective just approached me. She knows something. She wants me to talk." "Did you?" Nolan asked quickly. "No." "Good." Nolan breathed. "Don't? Not yet." "She said to be careful." "Yeah," Nolan muttered. "You need to be more than careful. You need to keep your head down. I'll come over." "No," Ethan said. "I need some time." "Just stay available." Another silence. "All right," Nolan said. "But Ethan, whatever happened to Lila, it's not your fault, and you're not alone." After he hung up, Ethan sat on the couch, staring at the metal box. The truth was brutal. Lila had died because of what was in that box, and Ethan had inherited it. The guilt seeped through him slowly, like poison leaking into water. He reached for the bag of documents again, searching for something, anything, to help him understand what she risked her life for. A small flash drive sat at the bottom of the metal box, labeled only with a single date. The date was the night Ethan had been suspended from work. His breath hitched. He plugged the flash drive into his laptop. A video file popped up. For a moment, he just stared at it. Then he clicked. The video began with shaky footage, a security camera angle from inside a parking garage. A woman walked into frame, dark hair, familiar posture, Lila, and then Marcus entered behind her. He grabbed her arm. Hard, Ethan's stomach turned. She tried to pull away. She said something Ethan couldn't hear. Marcus leaned in close, his face inches from hers. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't charming. He was threatening. Lila shoved him. Marcus slapped her. The sound echoed in the garage. Ethan felt it like a physical blow. He watched, his heart shattering as Lila stumbled, and Marcus cornered her between two cars. She reached into her purse, hands trembling. Marcus grabbed it from her and threw it aside. Ethan stared in horror. This was proof. This was motive. This was everything. The clip ended abruptly. Ethan covered his mouth with his hand, his breath raspy and uneven. "Lila," he whispered. Whatever she had done wrong, whatever mistakes she had made, she did not deserve this. He shut the laptop and leaned back, trembling. He was done being hunted, done being helpless, done being silent. He didn't know how yet, but he would expose Marcus, for Lila, for himself, even if it killed him. The hours after Ethan watched the footage felt unreal, like walking through a dream where nothing made sense and everything hurt in the same breath. He replayed the video again and again, each viewing another knife twisting deeper into his chest. Seeing Lila frightened, seeing her shoved, slapped, cornered, shattered pieces of him he didn't know were still fragile. Even after everything she'd done, after the betrayal, the lies, the divorce, a part of him still remembered the woman who once traced constellations across his back when he couldn't sleep, the woman who whispered promises on long drives, barefoot on dashboard, hair whipping out the window, the woman he thought he'd grow old with. Now she was gone, and the last images he had of her were those, terrified, trapped, hunted by Marcus, by the man who ruined Ethan's life. Tears burned behind his eyes, but they didn't fall, not yet. Not until the numbness wore off. Eventually, when the shaking subsided, Ethan forced himself to shut the laptop and breathe. He couldn't fall apart, not now. Not when the danger Leela warned him about was closer than ever. But grief doesn't listen to logic. It seeped into him slowly. A tide he couldn't hold back. He didn't know how long he sat on the couch, minutes, hours before a faint sound pulled him back to reality. A news alert pinged on his phone. He picked it up with trembling hands. Breaking: Woman dies after car plunges from Ridgewater Bridge. The headline was accompanied by a blurry photo of Lila's vehicle being pulled from the water. The article claimed her death was being treated as accidental, caused by potential mechanical failure, though investigations were ongoing. It was a lie. Ethan knew it. Harper probably knew it. And Marcus knew exactly why it happened. Ethan stared at the screen until the text blurred into static. He needed air. He grabbed his jacket and stepped outside, walking aimlessly down the street. The sun was setting, casting long shadows that stretched across the pavement like dark fingers. The air was cool, crisp, carrying the faint scent of sea salt from the distant harbor. He walked until he reached a small park near his building. One bench, 2 lampposts, a few scraggly trees. He sat heavily, elbows on knees, staring at his hands. They trembled slightly, a mix of exhaustion, fear, and a rising storm of anger. Footsteps approached behind him. He stiffened. A shadow fell across the bench. Ethan. He turned slowly. Detective Harper King stood a few feet away, her expression unreadable beneath the soft glow of a street lamp. Her blazer was gone, replaced by a dark windbreaker. Somehow she looked both disarming and dangerous at the same time. "What are you doing here?" Ethan asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "I followed you." Blunt, unapologetic. "Why?" he demanded. "Because," she said, taking a careful step closer. "I don't think Lila's death was an accident, and I don't think you believe that either." The honesty disarmed him. He swallowed hard. "What makes you think that?" Harper sat on the far end of the bench, giving him space. Her car didn't show signs of mechanical failure. No brake issues, no steering lock, nothing. She met his gaze. But the trunk was already damaged before the crash. Ethan's heart lurched. You saw that." "I saw inconsistencies," she replied, "and Marcus Cross was at the scene within an hour, claiming he was grief-stricken and wanted to support the investigation. But he seemed more interested in the wreckage than the woman." Ethan felt a surge of nausea. Marcus hadn't even waited a day, not even hours. He didn't care about her. Ethan whispered, "He killed her." Harper didn't react immediately. She studied him as if memorizing every nuance. "You know something. Something you're terrified to say." Ethan's throat tightened. He could feel panic clawing at him. Leela's warning echoed in his mind. "Don't trust anyone unless you're absolutely sure." "I can't," he said quietly. "It's not safe." Harper exhaled slowly. "Ethan, listen to me. I'm not your enemy. I'm not working for Marcus. In fact, I've been investigating him for months." She pulled out a small notebook and flipped it open. "Financial wrongdoing, shell companies, a trail of money that leads to offshore accounts and political donations. But I've never been able to prove anything. Not yet." Ethan stared. His pulse quickened. "You have something, don't you?" she asked softly. "Something that scared Leela. Something she left behind." He opened his mouth, then shut it. Harper waited, eyes patient, calm, authoritative. Finally, Ethan asked, "If I did, would you protect me?" There was no hesitation. "Yes." He looked at her for a long moment. She wasn't lying. He could see it, the steadiness, the determination. She wasn't rattling him or cornering him. She was offering something, a lifeline. And yet, as much as he wanted to trust her, Nolan's warning replayed in his mind. "You don't know who's in Marcus's pocket, Ethan," Harper said gently. "I can't help you if you don't help me first. Whatever killed Lila, it isn't finished." A cold shiver crawled down Ethan's spine. He stood abruptly. I need more time. Harper rose too, but didn't step closer. Call me, she said quietly. Before it's too late. Ethan nodded once barely and walked away. He didn't look back. When he got home, his apartment felt smaller, darker. He double-checked the locks, triple-checked them. Then he went to the kitchen for water. His hand froze. The metal box was no longer on the table. His stomach dropped. He set everything down and scanned the apartment. Nolan, he called out instinctively. Though he knew Nolan wasn't there. The box wasn't in the living room, not in the hallway, not on the couch. He tore through the apartment, heart pounding. When he reached the bedroom, he saw a shadow on the floor. The box, hidden half under the bed. He must have left it there last night, he tried to convince himself. Or Nolan moved it for safety, but a cold realization washed over him. He had never put it there, and Nolan had never been in this room. Someone had been in his apartment. He moved slowly, deliberately, stepping backward until he reached the closet. His breath quickened. He pulled the closet door open. Nothing. He checked the bathroom. Empty. He checked every corner, every dark space. No one. But someone had been there. Someone who didn't take the box, not because they couldn't, but because they wanted him to know they could. A warning, a message. His phone buzzed. Ethan nearly dropped it. A text. Unknown number. You're next. His heart slammed against his ribs. Another message followed. Give us what she gave you. And a final one. A man like you shouldn't die for someone else's mistakes. Ethan's knees gave out. He collapsed onto the couch, shaking uncontrollably. The walls felt like they were closing in. Breathing became a chore. Thinking nearly impossible, he forced himself to dial Nolan. Nolan answered on the first ring. You okay? He asked urgently. No, Ethan whispered. Someone was in my apartment. Silence. Did they take anything? Nolan asked finally. No, they left the box, but they moved it. What did they say? Ethan choked out the messages. Nolan cursed under his breath. All right, stay put. Lock everything. I'm coming over. No, Ethan refused. If they're watching me, seeing you here will put you in danger too. Ethan, I said no, Ethan said, voice cracking. Just stay by your phone, please. Nolan hesitated. Fine. But you call me if anything happens. Anything. The call ended. Ethan sat alone in the suffocating quiet. He looked at the box, the envelope, the laptop, the shattered fragments of Lila's life. He wasn't paranoid. He wasn't imagining things. They were watching. They knew where he lived, and they wanted the evidence. And behind all of it, Marcus Cross. Ethan wiped cold sweat from his forehead. He wasn't safe, and neither was anyone near him. One truth became painfully clear. He couldn't stay in the dark anymore. He had to fight. But to do that, he would need allies, and he had no idea who to trust. Not Nolan, not Harper, maybe not anyone. But he had one thing Marcus didn't expect. He had nothing left to lose. And men with nothing to lose were dangerous. The night after Ethan received the anonymous threats was one of the longest of his life. He didn't sleep. He couldn't. Every creak in the apartment, every shift of the wind outside, every passing car made his body tense, like an animal waiting for the snap of a trap. The metal box lay on the table, illuminated by the dim lamplight, looking deceptively ordinary for something capable of shattering entire lives. At 3:17 a.m., Ethan finally admitted what he already knew. He couldn't stay there anymore, not with people coming and going freely through his apartment like shadows slipping under doorways, not with Lila dead, not with Marcus closing in. He needed help, real help, someone who didn't owe him loyalty the way Nolan did, someone who wasn't emotionally entangled, someone who had the training and authority Marcus couldn't easily swallow. Harper King. The thought alone made his pulse lurch. He didn't trust her, not fully, but she was the only one who had looked him in the eye and said, I can help you. And after seeing the footage of Marcus and Lila in the parking garage, after reading Lila's desperate warnings, Ethan knew he couldn't navigate this on his own. He needed to tell Detective King part of the truth. Not everything, he wasn't that reckless yet, but enough to test where she stood. But first, he needed the metal box open completely. He'd seen only a glimpse of what was inside. There was more folders whose headers he hadn't scanned, encrypted files, a second compartment he couldn't access. He needed someone who could crack what his amateur attempts could not. Sam Rosario, the old mechanic, had surprised Ethan with his keen instincts and quiet steadiness. Sam wasn't connected to Marcus. He wasn't interested in money or manipulation. He was a man who'd lived long enough to recognize danger and still stand beside someone who needed help. So, as dawn pushed pale light across the sky, Ethan gathered the metal box, the suitcase, and the envelope. He stuffed everything into a duffel bag, pulled on his jacket, and stepped outside with the cautious fear of someone who expected a bullet to greet him at any moment. The street was silent, too silent. No black SUV, no strange figures lurking. But that only made him more nervous. Predators didn't always announce themselves. Sometimes they waited until you exhaled. Ethan kept his head down and hurried to the sedan. He scanned the back seat before getting in. His hands shook as he started the engine, and for a terrifying second it sputtered, coughing like it might die, but then it roared to life. He drove through the quiet streets toward Sam's garage, constantly checking his mirrors. Every car felt like a tale. Every pedestrian felt like a lookout. By the time he pulled into the lot behind the garage, his nerves were vibrating like exposed wires. Sam was already outside, sipping from a chipped coffee mug and watching the street with that same unreadable gaze he always carried. He nodded when Ethan approached. "You look like you haven't slept in a month," Sam observed. "I haven't slept since yesterday." Ethan muttered. Sam tilted his head. "Trouble. Someone was inside my apartment last night." Sam's eyes narrowed. "You call the cops." "No." "Good," Sam said immediately. "You don't know who's clean?" The confirmation punched Ethan in the chest. "I need your help," Sam gestured inside the garage. "Come in." Once inside, surrounded by the scent of oil, steel, and old music playing faintly from a radio, Ethan placed the duffel on the workbench and pulled out the metal box. Sam stared at it with a long, heavy silence. "That the thing from your trunk?" Sam asked. "Yes." Sam nodded slowly. "What's inside?" "Everything," Ethan whispered. "Evidence, money, documents that could take Marcus down." Sam didn't react with shock, just a slow exhale. "Let me see it." Ethan opened the box. The papers rustled like dry leaves. Sam leaned closer, not touching anything, just studying. "This is bad business," Sam muttered. "Not your average fraud scheme. These are leverage files. Insurance. Someone collected these to keep powerful men in line." "And Leela had it," Ethan said. "She stole it from Marcus." Sam's eyes softened with something like quiet pity. "And that got her killed." Ethan's throat tightened. He couldn't speak, so he nodded. Sam pointed at the second compartment, one that required a combination. "You tried this yet?" Ethan shook his head. "I didn't even know it opened." Sam pulled out a toolkit, selecting a pair of narrow picks. "Combination locks leave impressions. Takes patience." He worked carefully, pressing his ear close, listening for the faintest clicks. Ethan watched the older man work, fighting the urge to glance over his shoulder every few seconds. After 10 minutes, Sam paused. "Got it." He turned the dial, and a small click echoed in the garage. Ethan's heart leaped. Sam lifted the compartment lid. Inside were 3 items. A stack of printed emails between Marcus and a senator. A USB labeled Insurance A, only if I disappear. A sealed envelope, addressed in neat handwriting. "To Ethan, if you find the second latch." Ethan's knees nearly buckled. She left another message. Sam placed a steadying hand on Ethan's shoulder. "Take your time." Hands trembling, Ethan opened the envelope. "Ethan, if you found this, it means you didn't give up. I'm grateful. I'm scared. I'm sorry. More than anything else, I'm sorry. These are the most dangerous files Marcus keeps. He only ever revealed them to me once, when he wanted me to understand what would happen if I betrayed him. You must be careful. People involved in these messages have the power to bury anything, even you. Give this to someone who can protect it. Not the police. Not anyone tied to politics. Find an investigator with nothing to lose. Someone stubborn. Someone who won't be bought. Someone like you. I hope you can forgive me someday. I loved you even when I didn't know how, Lila. Ethan wiped a hand over his face. He had no tears left, only exhaustion and a strange rising fury. Sam stepped back, giving him space. So what's your move? Ethan closed the envelope gently. Detective King. Sam raised an eyebrow. You trust her? No, Ethan admitted. But she's the only one who seems to want Marcus as badly as I do. Sam Seahead. Then bring her something she can't ignore. Ethan nodded. But before he could pack the files, his phone buzzed. A message. From Nolan. We need to talk. Urgent. Come to the old freight yard. North entrance. Alone. Ethan's pulse stumbled. The freight yard. At this hour. Another message appeared seconds later. Trust me on this one. It's not safe anywhere else. Ethan stared at the screen, confusion and dread swirling. Sam leaned closer. Everything okay? I don't know, Ethan murmured. Nolan wants to meet. He says it's urgent. Sam frowned deeply. In a freight yard? Sounds like a trap. Nolan's my friend, Ethan said. Though the certainty in his voice wavered, Sam didn't look convinced. Or he's scared. Or someone's forcing his hand. Ethan's chest tightened. I have to go. Sam grabbed his arm. Not alone. I don't have a choice, Ethan replied quietly. If something happened to Nolan because of what I told him. Sam hesitated, then slowly released his grip. Take the metal box with you, the mechanic said. If it's a trap, you need leverage. Ethan shook his head. No, too risky. If they want it, they'll kill me the moment they see it. Sam considered this. Then, take something small, something real, but not everything. Ethan grabbed the USB labeled Insurance A and the video clip. He stuffed them into his jacket pocket. Sam walked him to the sedan. Before Ethan got in, Sam gripped his shoulder. Ethan, he said, gaze heavy with warning. Watch your back, and don't trust anyone not fully. Not until you see how they move. Ethan nodded slowly. I'll be careful. He started the car. As he drove toward the freight yard, he didn't notice the black SUV that pulled away from the curb 2 blocks behind him, or the man in the passenger seat who lifted a phone and murmured, He's on the move. Ethan was driving straight into the lion's mouth, and he had no idea one of the hunters he feared most was no longer outside the circle of trust. He was inside it, right beside him. The northern freight yard sat on the edge of Crescent Bay, like an abandoned skeleton, half swallowed by rust and weeds. Rows of old shipping containers, metal siding peeling from years of salt air, cast long shadows in the dim glow of the street lamps. It was the kind of place where secrets could be exchanged, bodies could disappear, and no one would hear a scream under the howl of the coastal wind. Ethan parked the sedan near the chain-link fence, engine still ticking from the drive. The moment he stepped out, the cold air punched him in the lungs. He shoved his hands into his jacket pockets and held the USB and the copy of the incriminating video closer to his body, as if the evidence itself might shield him somehow. This is insane, he muttered to himself. But Nolan was his friend, his oldest friend, the one person he still believed wouldn't betray him, at least. He hoped so. He moved deeper into the yard, boots crunching over gravel. Far ahead, a single floodlight flickered above a loading platform, its pulsing glow the only sign of life. Nolan! Ethan called out. His voice echoed faintly. I'm here. No response. He checked his phone. 1 bar. No new messages. Come on, he whispered. Don't do this to me. He walked further, passing stacks of containers that towered overhead like iron monoliths. Every metallic groan from shifting beams made him flinch. Then, footsteps. Behind him, Ethan spun around. Nolan. A figure stepped into the light. Not Nolan. Detective Harper King stood there, hands in her pockets, expression tight. Ethan's stomach dropped. What? What are you doing here? I should be asking you that, Harper said, approaching slowly. Why meet someone alone in a place like this? Ethan hesitated, eyes darting past her. I didn't tell you to come. I never said you did. Her gaze sharpened meaningfully. I followed the SUV that was tailing you, Harper said, and it led here. Ethan froze. SUV. Yes. Her expression darkened. Black. No plates. Two men inside. His pulse stumbled. Had they been following him the whole time? Harper stepped closer. Ethan, who are you meeting? My friend, he said quickly. Nolan Pierce. He texted me. He said it was urgent. Harper's jaw tensed. Show me the message. Ethan pulled out his phone with shaking hands. He opened the text. Harper's eyes narrowed. This number, she said slowly, belongs to a prepaid burner phone. Not Nolan's. Ethan's blood turned to ice. No, that's not possible. Nolan wouldn't. You were lured here, Harper said firmly. Now tell me exactly what you brought with you. The weight in his jacket pocket suddenly felt much heavier. He couldn't hold her gaze. You brought evidence, Harper said, voice low. Didn't you? Ethan swallowed. Just a copy. Not everything. Good, because you need to leave. Now. Before Ethan could reply, a sharp metallic clang echoed through the yard, like someone kicking a loose container latch. Harper moved instantly, stepping in front of him. Get down. Ethan dropped behind a stack of crates as Harper drew her gun. Shadows shifted behind a container 20 yards away. Footsteps, multiple. A voice called out, echoing across the metal walls. Smooth, mocking, cruel in its confidence. Well, the voice drawled, if it isn't Ethan Ward, you've been busy. Marcus Cross stepped into the floodlight. A coat draped over his shoulders like a king surveying his domain. Two men flanked him, each built like a wall, one carrying a crowbar, the other something worse, a firearm tucked just under his jacket. Ethan's breath caught, Harper's posture straightened, gun raised. Cross, stay where you are. Marcus smirked. Detective King, always meddling in affairs far above your clearance. You should have stayed out of this. You had no right to come near him, Harper snapped. Ethan is under investigation and potential protection. Marcus chuckled. Protection? From what? He spread his arms innocently. From a grieving executive who just wants answers about his late employee. Ethan stepped into view despite Harper shoving her arm out to stop him. Employee. Ethan shouted, You killed her. Marcus's smile thinned. Careful, Ethan. That's a very dangerous accusation. She recorded you, Ethan said. I saw the video. Marcus's eyes darkened. A crack in his polished facade. So she told you everything. Marcus murmured. What a nuisance she became at the end. Always snooping where she didn't belong. Ethan felt something inside him snap. You murdered her because she tried to stop you. No, Marcus said calmly. I ended her because she threatened me, he signaled. The man with the crowbar moved. Harper fired first. The bullet struck the container behind Marcus's man with a piercing clang. He dove for cover. Marcus stepped back, his expression still eerily composed. So dramatic. Marcus sighed. But predictable. It's... Another figure emerged from behind the containers. Ethan's heart plummeted. Nolan, he whispered. Nolan stepped forward, hands raised in a mock apology. Sorry, Ethan, but you weren't very good at hiding your secrets. Ethan stumbled backward. No, you didn't. Nolan shrugged. I tried. Man, I really did. But you had something bigger than both of us. And Marcus pays better than friendship. The betrayal burned like acid. You set me up. Ethan choked out. You told them about the box. I told them you'd panic. Nolan corrected. I told them you'd run straight into their hands. Harper aimed her gun at Nolan. Move and you're done. But Nolan wasn't afraid. He was smirking. Detective King, Marcus said casually. You're surrounded. Drop your weapon. Not a chance, Harper growled. Ethan stood between them, between danger on every side, and realized something terrifying. Marcus didn't want to kill him. Not yet. Not until he got the evidence. You have something of mine, Marcus said softly. Hand it over, Ethan, and I might let you walk away. Ethan's hand tightened around the USB in his pocket. He forced himself to meet Marcus's eyes. You'll kill me either way, Ethan said. Marcus smiled faintly. Yes, but it'll hurt less if you cooperate. Harper shifted beside him, whispering under her breath. When I move, run, do not stop. What about you? Ethan whispered. I'll handle myself. But before she could make a move, Nolan lunged, grabbing her arm. Harper twisted, elbowing him in the ribs. But another man grabbed her from behind. Her gun clattered across the ground. Nolan, stop, Ethan yelled, voice breaking. You don't know what you're doing. Oh, I do, Nolan said. I'm choosing the winning side. Marcus stepped forward now, walking slowly, almost casually, as if the outcome was already decided. Last chance, Ethan? Ethan's heart hammered violently. He could hand over the evidence and die. He could refuse and die faster. He could run, but they were everywhere. Unless... Ethan reached into his jacket. Marcus inhaled sharply, expecting the USB. Instead, Ethan pulled out his phone, thumb hovering over a bright red button on the screen. A screen Harper had helped him install a secure app on earlier that day. When she told him, if anything happens, press this. It sends everything to federal servers and 10 journalists. Marcus's face drained. Ethan pressed the button. A chime sounded. Uploading. Marcus lunged with a roar. Gunfire erupted. Chaos exploded through the freight yard shouts. Bullets ricocheting off metal. Harper breaking free long enough to tackle one of Marcus's men. Ethan sprinted toward the containers, gripping the USB like a lifeline. Behind him, Marcus screamed, "Get him!" Ethan ran blindly into the maze of rusted steel. He didn't look back, but he could hear Nolan yelling. He could hear Marcus cursing, and he could hear Harper fighting for both of their lives, for the first time since the nightmare began. Ethan felt like he had chosen the one right move, but the night was far from over, and survival was far from guaranteed. Ethan didn't run so much as he lunged into pure instinct. The moment he hit the maze of shipping containers, the freight yard seemed to swallow him whole. Rusty metal walls towered on either side, stretching so high the sky narrowed into a thin strip of ink above him. Every sound echoed his footsteps, his breath, the shouts behind him. Find him! Marcus's voice cracked like a whip. Ethan darted around a corner, nearly slipping on gravel. His lungs burned, his legs trembled, but adrenaline pushed him onward, sharp and electric. He clutched the USB in his fist so tightly, the edges dug into his palm. Uploading, he whispered to himself. Uploading. But the connection here was terrible. The video file was huge. He had no idea if the upload had even gone through before the chaos erupted. Behind him, gunfire exploded again, loud, metallic, bouncing off the containers like thunder trapped inside a metal cage. Harper was still fighting. He could hear her a grunt, a struggle, another shot. Ethan wanted to look back. He didn't dare. He cut left again, then right, slipping between two crates with barely a foot of space between them. He pressed himself against the cold metal, his chest heaving as he tried to quiet his breath. Footsteps pounded somewhere nearby. Split up, someone barked. He couldn't have gone far. Ethan squeezed his eyes shut. He could hear them, heavy boots crunching gravel, the scrape of metal. Low voices exchanging directions. Nolan's voice joined them. Ethan's throat tightened. Nolan, his best friend, the man he'd trusted with everything. "You check the far side," Nolan shouted. "He's not stupid enough to hide close." Ethan's jaw clenched. Nolan's voice, once familiar and grounding, now made his skin crawl. How long had Nolan been playing both sides? How many secrets had Ethan spilled to him that Marcus now knew? He forced himself to stay still, silent even as rage twisted hot inside his chest. Minutes dragged. The footsteps grew faint, then returned, then drifted again. Ethan held his breath so long his vision blurred around the edges. A shadow passed right in front of the narrow gap where he hid. He froze. The man stopped, turned. "Ethan." The voice whispered softly. Ethan's heart stuttered. "Nolan." Nolan's outline shifted forward. He leaned close to the gap, face half lit by the flickering floodlight above. "I know you're in here," Nolan said, voice disturbingly calm. "Come out, man. We can talk about this." Ethan didn't move. "Look," Nolan continued, tone softening in a mimicry of sincerity. "I didn't want it to end like this. But you forced my hand. If you just give Marcus what he wants, he'll let you walk away." Ethan almost laughed. Almost. The sound curdled in his throat. "Censored? It's a stancing." Nolan sighed. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be. Come on." He reached a hand toward the crate, as if to shift it. Ethan tensed, muscles coiled. A sudden shout ripped through the yard. "Nolan!" "This way." Nolan cursed under his breath and stepped back. "Stay put, Ethan. I'll find you." His footsteps faded. Ethan didn't breathe for a full 10 seconds until he heard 2 more gunshots echo from the far side of the yard. Harper. A jolt of panic lit through him. He had to find her. He couldn't leave her fighting alone. He slipped out of the narrow alley of containers and crouched low. Keeping to the shadows, the yard stretched endlessly in all directions, a labyrinth of danger. But he followed the sound of conflict, the easiest path through the chaos. As he approached the loading platform illuminated by a dying floodlight, he saw movement. Harper was on the ground, pinned by one of Marcus's men. She fought viciously, kicking, twisting, grappling for control, but she was losing. Another man stood nearby, scanning the darkness with a flashlight. Ethan's heart thundered. He couldn't take on 2 men. He had no weapon. Nothing but the USB and raw desperation. But Harper, she had saved him. Twice now. He couldn't leave her. His eyes darted around. Then he spotted it. A loose metal pipe lying along the gravel. Before fear could talk him out of it, Ethan sprinted forward. "Hey!" he shouted. Both men turned. Ethan swung the pipe with every ounce of strength he had left. The blow connected with the head of the man pinning Harper. The sound was sickening, a crack of bone meeting steel. The man collapsed instantly. The second man raised a gun. Harper reacted faster. She kicked the fallen man's weapon toward Ethan. "Grab it!" Ethan dove for it as the second man fired. The bullet ricocheted off the crate beside him, spraying rust fragments. Ethan rolled, scrambled to aim, and without thinking pulled the trigger. The shot hit the man in the shoulder. He spun backward, gun falling from his grip. Harper was on her feet in an instant. She kicked the weapon away, cuffed him in one smooth motion, then grabbed Ethan's arm. "Are you okay?" she shouted. "No," Ethan yelled back. "But I'm alive." Harper glanced at the sky. "We don't have much time." The others. A voice thundered behind them. "Enough!" "Marcus." He stepped out from behind a stack of containers, Nolan flanking him. Marcus held a gun. Nolan held a flashlight and an expression Ethan couldn't read anymore. "Drop the weapon, Harper," Marcus ordered, eyes sharp as broken glass. Harper didn't drop it. Marcus fired a warning shot inches from her feet. The gravel sprayed. Harper's jaw tightened. Slowly, she lowered the gun, but didn't let it go entirely. "Good," Marcus said. "Now you're going to hand over everything. The USB. The hard drives. Every last file Lila stole." Ethan stepped forward instinctively. "She didn't steal them. She exposed you." Marcus smirked. History is written by survivors, Ethan, and you're not going to be one. Nolan stepped closer. Just give it to them, man. Don't be stupid. Shut up, Ethan spat. You betrayed me. Nolan's face twitched, but not with remorse. With irritation. I did what I had to do. No, Ethan said. You did what made you rich. The wind shifted. The night held its breath. Marcus aimed the gun at Ethan. Last chance. Harper moved. Not toward Marcus, but toward Ethan. Run, she whispered fiercely. Now. Marcus pulled the trigger. Harper shoved Ethan out of the way. The shot struck her arm. She cried out, staggering backward. Go, she shouted, blood seeping through her sleeve. Ethan didn't think he grabbed her uninjured arm and dragged her behind a stack of crates as gunfire erupted again. Nolan's voice echoed across the yard. He's heading east. Stop them, Marcus bellowed. Ethan and Harper ran, half stumbling, half sprinting, weaving between containers as bullets tore through the air. Harper gritted her teeth. We need to get to my car. It's on the west side. That's suicide, Ethan yelled. It's our only shot. They sprinted through the darkness, feet pounding gravel, breaths ragged. The freight yard twisted endlessly, but Harper seemed to know the layout, steering them through blind corners and narrow alleys. Behind them, shouts grew distant, but not enough. Then, finally, a fence, a gate, a small black SUV with police plates. Harper fumbled for her keys with shaking hands. Come on, come on. A bullet hit the fence beside them. Marcus's voice roared. Don't let them escape. Harper shoved Ethan into the passenger seat, jumped in behind the wheel, and slammed the engine to life. The SUV tore down the gravel path as headlights flashed behind them. Ethan twisted around in his seat. Marcus and Nolan were sprinting to a parked vehicle. They're getting in the car, he shouted. Harper stomped the gas pedal. Then we moved faster. The SUV flew through the yard, crashing through puddles, skidding around corners. Harper's face was pale, jaw clenched in pain, blood dripping down her arm. They'll kill us, Ethan whispered. Not if we get to the station, Harper said. The upload didn't finish. I don't know, Ethan said. I hit the button, but then we keep everything alive until it does. Behind them, Marcus's car roared to life. Headlights blazed. They're right behind us, Ethan shouted. Harper tightened her grip, eyes burning with determination. Then hold on, she said. This isn't over. And with that, the SUV shot out of the freight yard and into the night where the final confrontation waited, breathless and inevitable. The streets of Crescent Bay blurred into streaks of light as Harper's SUV tore through the industrial district. The engine roared under the strain, tires screaming with every sharp turn. Ethan braced himself against the dashboard, fingers digging into the edge, as if he could anchor himself against the chaos unfolding around them. Behind them, Marcus's sleek black sedan closed in fast, headlights cutting through the darkness like twin blades. Every few seconds, a flash illuminated the street shots fired from Marcus's men. Bullets pinged off the SUV's reinforced rear, sparks flying. They're gaining, Ethan shouted. I can see that. Harper snapped through clenched teeth. She gripped the wheel with her good hand, her wounded arm slick with blood. Yet somehow she drove with precision, weaving through the narrow side streets, as if she'd memorized every inch of the city. Ethan risked a glance back. Marcus's car skidded around a corner, sending up a cloud of dust. Nolan was behind the wheel. Marcus leaned out the passenger side window, gun raised, aiming with chilling calm. Get down, Harper barked. Ethan ducked just as a bullet shattered the SUV's rear window. Glass exploded inward, pelting his arms and neck. He shielded his head with his jacket. Harper swerved hard left, narrowly avoiding a fire hydrant. They've got more firepower than I expected. They're criminals, Ethan yelled. They plan for this kind of thing. Yeah, well, so do I. Harper reached down, pressed a switch on the dashboard, and the armored shutters slid over the remaining windows with a metallic thunk. Ethan blinked. Your car has armor. Harper kept her gaze on the road, Internal affairs doesn't always play nice. A girl's gotta protect herself. Another hail of bullets slammed against the SUV, but this time, the metal absorbed the impact. We can't outrun them, Ethan said. They'll just keep shooting until something gives. Wasn't planning to outrun them, Harper replied. We're heading somewhere they won't follow. Ethan frowned. Where? The one place even Marcus can't touch us. She didn't explain further, but Ethan saw her eyes flick to the police radio mounted near the center console. Ethan's pulse quickened. Harper. You said not to trust the police. I said not to trust the wrong ones. She swerved around a stalled truck. There's one detective I trust, Captain Reyes. If we get to him, Marcus loses his teeth. Ethan nodded, clinging to hope he barely felt. Another shot rang out. The passenger side mirror exploded. Nolan's voice carried from behind them, faint, but unmistakably gloating. You can't run forever, Ethan. Ethan clenched his jaw. I can try. Harper cut across a red light, horns blaring. Hang on, this next turn is tight. What? Before he could finish, she whipped the SUV into a narrow alley. The vehicle scraped against the brick walls on both sides, with a hideous screech of metal. Marcus's sedan tried to follow, but the alley was too narrow. The black car slammed into the walls on both sides. Metal crumpled. Sparks shot out. The vehicle screeched to a halt. Harper sped out the far end and onto open road. Yes! Ethan shouted, adrenaline surging. Don't celebrate yet, Harper hissed. They'll get out on foot and call backup. She wasn't wrong. Behind them, Marcus and Nolan emerged from their wrecked car, shouting into phones. Two of Marcus's men climbed out the back seat, one limping from the impact. We've bought maybe 2 minutes, Harper said. They blasted through the city streets, swerving around late-night traffic, until the buildings grew taller, more modern, more polished. The clean lines of the civic district rose into view. Ethan felt a spark of hope. We're going to the precinct. Not quite, Harper said. A few seconds later, he saw it. The Crescent Bay Justice Center, a monolithic steel and glass structure glowing in the night. Not a regular police station, this was where high-level cases were handled, protected, scrutinized. A fortress. Harper pulled into the underground parking garage, her badge scanning them through the security gate. Ethan slumped back in his seat, feeling the tension drain from his muscles in violent waves. We made it, he panted. Not yet, Harper said. Security buys us time, not safety. She parked the SUV halfway into a restricted section. As the engine died, the sudden quiet felt unreal, as if the world had paused just long enough for them to breathe. Harper grabbed Ethan's arm. Listen to me. When we get inside, stick to me. Don't talk to anyone until we reach Captain Reyes. No one. Ethan nodded. They hurried through the garage. Harper's steps faltered slightly from blood loss. But she didn't slow. Ethan supported her weight without thinking. When they reached the elevator, Harper scanned her ID. The elevator chimed, doors sliding open. A chill ran down Ethan's spine. Inside stood Captain Miguel Reyes, a tall man with salt and pepper hair, sharp eyes, and an expression that could cut through steel. Harper, Reyes said, voice deep, steady, and unreadable. You look terrible. Shot. Harper replied bluntly. Reyes's gaze shifted to Ethan. This must be Ward. Ethan tensed. Yeah. Reyes nodded once. Let's get upstairs. You're both safe now. They stepped inside. The doors closed. As the elevator ascended, Harper swayed for the first time. Reyes caught her elbow. You did good bringing him here, Reyes said. We'll handle the rest. Ethan cleared his throat. Detective King said, you could help us. Reyes gave a small smile. She was right. Ethan relaxed a little, until he noticed something subtle. Reyes didn't ask why Ethan needed help, didn't ask about the evidence, didn't ask how Harper got shot. He already knew. Ethan's stomach churned. The elevator stopped. The doors opened to a high-security floor, empty, quiet, dimly lit. Reyes gestured forward. This way. Ethan and Harper stepped out, and the doors closed behind them with a metallic slam. Reyes didn't step out. Ethan turned sharply. Captain! Reyes stood inside the elevator, face expressionless, hands clasped behind his back. Something slid into place behind him. A piece of paper taped to the elevator wall. Ethan's eyes widened. It was a message. 3 words, handwritten. I'm sorry, Ethan, followed by a signature he knew too well. Nolan. The elevator doors sealed. Harper's face went ghostly pale. Ethan, step back. The elevator began descending. No. Ethan whispered. No, no, no. Reyes didn't move. He simply spoke through the narrowing gap. You should have handed over the files. Then, a violent, bone-rattling explosion shook the shaft. The elevator plummeted. Ethan stumbled back, eyes wide with horror. Flames shot up through the cracks, the lights flickering madly. Harper grabbed his arm. Run. They tore down the hallway as alarms blared. Someone in the precinct had been bought. Someone high. Someone dangerous. Reyes wasn't saving them. He was delivering them. Harper shoved open a stairwell door. They ran down flight after flight as smoke seeped through the vents. Ethan's lungs screamed for air. He set us up, Ethan yelled. Not Reyes, Harper gasped. Nolan got to him, or someone above him, someone powerful. They burst out onto the first floor, a chaos of flickering lights, officers shouting, sprinklers hissing. Harper pointed to an exit. That way. They sprinted. Just as they reached the door, it slammed open from the outside. Marcus Cross stepped through, dust on his coat from the explosion, blood on his forehead, eyes burning with fury. Behind him stood Nolan. Nolan looked exhausted, torn, but determined. Ethan, Marcus said, voice low and venomous. You should have stayed quiet. Ethan stepped in front of Harper. I'm done being quiet. Marcus raised his gun. Harper reached for her own. Nolan lifted his hands. Don't, Marcus. Wait. Marcus fired. Harper shoved Ethan aside, screaming. The shot never hit, because Nolan had thrown himself in front of Marcus's gun. The bullet tore into Nolan's chest. No! Marcus roared. Nolan collapsed into Ethan's arms, blood blooming across his shirt. Ethan stared at him, stunned. Why? Why would you? Nolan coughed. A rattling, broken sound. I didn't know he'd go this far. You betrayed me, Ethan cried. I was wrong, Nolan whispered. Get him, Ethan. His hand pressed something into Ethan's palm. A second USB, Nolan's last card, his last act, his redemption. Nolan's eyes glazed over, his chest stilled. Marcus screamed, You idiot! Harper fired. Marcus fell. Sirens wailed. Officers stormed the lobby. Harper collapsed. Ethan dropped to his knees, clutching both USBs and the weight of every loss. Lila, Nolan, Harper, bleeding beside him. But it was over. Marcus Cross was finally exposed. Ethan had survived, barely, but survival was enough. In the end, Ethan learned that the darkest betrayals don't just come from enemies. They come from the people we trust, the ones we let closest to our hearts. But he also discovered something far more powerful, even in the deepest chaos. Courage can rise from the ruins. Lila's mistakes didn't erase the love she once carried. Nolan's betrayal didn't erase the redemption he chose in his final breath. And Ethan, broken, hunted, underestimated, found his strength not by being fearless, but by refusing to stay silent when fear demanded otherwise. Life will shake us. People will fail us. But the truth, once faced, can free us. And sometimes survival itself is proof of a person's resilience. If Ethan's journey moved you, let me know your thoughts in the comments. What part hit you the hardest? And if you enjoy emotional, cinematic stories like this, don't forget to subscribe for more.